Matt Langley with Love and Money at 7:43 here on the Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Good evening. Tonight I want to talk about the debate we've been having in Washington over the national debt.
I want you to know I made a sincere effort to work with the President to identify a path forward that would implement the principles of cut, cap, and balance.
It is Eye on the World with Selwyn Manning. Thanks very much to scoop.co.nz. Morning, Selwyn.
Yeah, good morning, Glenn.
And it won't be too hard for anyone to guess what we're talking about today. It is the debt crisis. Less than 48 hours to go till Armageddon. Well, that's what some people are saying anyway.
Yeah, maybe they'll be right. The United States debt crisis really has reached a stalemate, Glenn. It's due to the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress refusing to make a compromise or reach a compromise over their party's preferred debt reduction plans, and that's what it all really figures around. The budget crisis has caused Barack Obama, the president, to issue a plea to Americans, and it's kind of interesting in this way, his strategy. He's asking them directly through televised and webcast speeches to send a message to their individual representatives in the US Congress. So directly he's asking the public to respond to his plea, to go to those representatives all over the United States and urge them to think through what is best in the United States' interests rather than what is best in their party political interests, Glenn.
Yeah.
There's a clip here of Obama doing just that.
The only reason this balanced approach isn't on its way to becoming law right now is because a significant number of Republicans in Congress are insisting on a different approach, a cuts-only approach, an approach that doesn't ask the wealthiest Americans or biggest corporations to contribute anything at all. And because nothing is asked of those at the top of the income scale, such an approach would close the deficit only with more severe cuts to programs we all care about, cuts that place a greater burden on working families.
Some would say he's sounding a little bit angry, if Obama can sound angry, because he's very calm at the same time, isn't he?
Yeah. It's like this calm firmness that he's kind of created here. But, yeah, his favourite approach, which he's not talking about in that particular aspect of his speech or that particular segment of his speech, is a budget plan that lifts the US $14.3 trillion ceiling. So that debt, the $13.3 trillion debt that the United States has, that has a cap, a ceiling that the President and the Congress cannot go through. So what he's urging the Congress to do is to legislate to allow that ceiling to go up so that the United States can borrow a bit more in the short term to pay its bills. That's his plan. And also to shed over time, and over the next 10 years, around $4 trillion off that US federal government expenditure. So that's about Obama's thing. Obama, he also insisted that the US needs to live within its means. We've heard that kind of rhetoric here and, other parts of the world as well, that every American needs to contribute to get its books back in balance. He's saying it needs everybody kind of at the wheel to do this. Also, he added that the United States, in his plan, would make cuts to its defence spending, and that's obviously significant to all around the world, and make modest adjustments, is what he referred it to, in Medicare, and also take a balanced approach, those are the words he used, to that preserves some entitlements for US citizens. So what he's saying is they still need to have these entitlements to social security and things like that, whereas the Republicans are saying, no, we've got to go for broke here and we've got to cut. The ABC, it reported last night that Obama's plan, backed by the Democrats in Congress, would see $2.7 trillion deficit reduced over the next decade, and we mentioned that just above. But the debt limit hike that would carry through to the November 2012 elections, and that's what probably is really getting up the Republicans' nose here, is that the debt limit hike would carry them through to the November 12 elections. The Grand Old Party, or the GOP, the Republican representatives, they obviously disagree with this whole plan. They advocate what Obama refers to as deep spending cuts approach. That's a two-stage deficit plan that would start with an initial $1.2 trillion in savings over 10 years, and they're refusing to compromise on this. And we've got a bit of audio from the main man at the moment, Glenn. He's the Republican House Speaker, John Boehner, and he insists that Obama will not get a blank cheque to raise that debt ceiling, and he's ready to go.
I want you to know I made a sincere effort to work with the President to identify a path forward that would implement the principles of cut, cap, and balance in a manner that could secure bipartisan support and be signed into law. And I'll tell you, I gave it my all. Unfortunately, the President would not take yes for an answer. Even when we thought we might be close on an agreement, the President's demands changed. The President has often said we need a balanced approach, which in Washington means we spend more and you pay more.
Talk about playing hardball, Selwyn.
Yeah, it's hardball, all right, and this is looking the President in the eye and staring him down to a degree. The dilemma exists, though, as the Obama administration, it seeks to meet those interest payments on its debt. And just a reiteration, you know, that debt is $14.3 trillion. Obama, he cannot action this economic plan without the support of the majority of Congress. If the Republicans do not compromise, then the United States will default on that debt interest payment kind of plan it has.
Yeah.
What that means is, you know, there's severe consequences, not just for the United States citizens, but businesses, citizens right around the world, because the financial crisis is obviously keyed into what the United States is doing with its economy, and while it's in this stage, it's a really difficult thing. The United States economy, you know, obviously it's intrinsic to, you know, it's an intrinsic driver, an indicating factor really that influences those confidence factors that underscore the performance of capitalistic economies around the world. So the Republican Speaker of the House, John Boehner, he's adamant that he will not compromise on this, that he has a plan that he'll be putting through the Congress, and that Obama needs to kind of meet their demands here. And he's saying that they tried to compromise with Obama earlier on, but as soon as they reached a negotiation kind of state there, Obama upped the ante and tried to actually put a bit more of his interests in there, so the Republicans pulled out of that. There's another audio clip here that kind of goes into that with John Boehner kind of talking about that, Glenn.
And the sad truth is that the President wanted a blank check 6 months ago, and he wants a blank check today. This is just not going to happen. You see, there's no stalemate here in Congress. The House passed a bill to raise the debt limit with bipartisan support. And this week, while the Senate is struggling to pass a bill filled with phony accounting and Washington gimmicks, we're going to pass another bill, one that was developed with the support of the bipartisan leadership of the U.S. Senate.
So does that mean the ball's back in Obama's court?
Well, it is in a sense, but you can see if he's going directly to the United States public here and seeking their assistance, he is playing a ball. He's not slamming one back to the Republicans here, which is interesting. He's not using the political strategies that are available to him through the Democrats in the Congress to actually play this ball. He's going directly to the people, and that perhaps is his joker card, and that will remain to be seen whether or not that puts the shakes up some of those other Republicans. Of course, the causes of all of this are not just political. You know, this occurs as the US, like other Western economies, adjust to this new age of economic solution. You know, it's a whole thing since the economic crisis swept through. Domestically in the United States, the values of debt-laden assets, clearly they've permitted to inflate arguably due to, you know, inflate those assets arguably due to an ease on being able to acquire credit, which allows demand to kind of increase, and it pushes up the values. And when that demand starts to actually fluctuate, or the credit that's pushing that demand up, well, you get all sorts of strange patterns. And that some say that's what has underlined the financial crisis. And the United States has not done anything since then really to address that problem. Other contributing factors really, and I suppose, Glenn, they include decisions made by this dude, and there's a clip of this dude, and this is going back to 2003.
At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
So we're still paying for this guy, are we?
We're still paying for it in more ways than one, not just in cash. But the Bush administration, it inherited a surplus from the Clinton administration through its pursuit of an aggressive foreign policy, fighting two major wars on two fronts. That's Afghanistan and Iraq, of course. The United States lost its hold on its own economy. Bush, he relied on Europe, obviously, coming to the war table back in the 2002-2003 period. But while in reality, Germany and France, just going back a bit here on what happened at that time, they refused to comply with Bush's demands. Bush administration, it cut revenue at the same time, meaning cut taxes that would have arguably paid for some of its policies. But by slashing its revenue, its whole balanced economy went into deficit. It was then reliant on offshore borrowing. This stuff, Glenn, really, it's not rocket science. Even from down here in New Zealand back in 2002 for Scoop, I was writing a piece, and we were all writing a piece. Alistair, a colleague as well, was writing stuff along this kind of line. And there was a piece there that I remember, and I kind of looked at it yesterday, and it was a bit prophetic in a sense, it said, should Germany not come back to the war table, billions will be siphoned off from the US economy. Forget Medicaid, forget government-assisted housing programs, forget all the other kind of things of assistance, industrial protectionisms, removal of subsidies in heavy industry and commodity producers, all of that. We kind of argued that would, those kind of protectionisms, the United States industry and manufacturers would collapse if it kept up its foreign policy in that war on two fronts. And clearly what happened was exactly what we were kind of arguing. I'm not just saying we were alone here, but, the rationale was there to prove it wasn't rocket science. And that would be that the United States would face economic collapse, the American people would face failing consumerism, domestic economy in a freefall, societal chaos in a sense, and further collapse of the United States pillar institutions. But back today, Glenn, the consequences of all this is on our sleeves. We can see it all there. And perhaps there's a piece where, where we have Barack Obama here really picking up that ball. It's a bit of a hospital pass and actually trying to do something about this. And there's a sense of irony too, Glenn, that I think that the Republicans who slashed their revenues in different ways but increased their defence spending at a time under George Bush are now actually trying to hold the United States to ransom on different kind of policies and arguing that there's no choice here. So that's an interesting one. Even down here, down under, Bloomberg, for example, just to jump down a little bit on this, there's a guy here, Michael McCarthy, a Sydney-based chief market strategist with CMC Markets. Now he's talking, in heavy kind of economic terms here about what this means right here and now, irrespective of what occurs in the US stalemate.
Good morning, Susan. Well, I think the damage here has already been done, regardless of the agreement that comes out, unless it's a best-case scenario where we see the US agree to long-term restructuring of its debt situation, a long-term budget reduction and an immediate lifting of the debt ceiling. The outlook for markets remains poor through this, and particularly for the US. The concern here is that regardless of a deal, there is a downgrade coming through the pipeline, but perhaps even more importantly, the confidence of the global markets in the US government to manage its economic affairs has been shaken. And I think the trend we've seen in the US currency, once the reserve currency of choice, 10 years ago 70% of global central bank reserves were held in US. A year ago that was 62%, that's now 60%. I expect this sort of event will drive that proportion even lower.
So in a wrap-up, I didn't hear anything positive there, Selwyn, at all.
No. And in a sense, we're seeing a shift, geopolitically, just to wrap this all up. Since the presidency of Bill Clinton, the United States' foreign and economic policies have permitted a vulnerability to kind of develop here. And that has seen the United States' foes, traditional foes here, manoeuvre to assist a descendancy, really, from the United States being able to sustain its superpower status. And that fact looks set to continue. And you can see all of those countries where their economic policies are closely aligned to China are doing okay. Those that remain aligned to euro, up in the Eurozone, and to the United States dollar are really struggling out there, Glenn.
Okay, well that was Eye on the World with Selwyn Manning looking at the debt crisis. You can find this as a video once more up at scoop.co.nz. Thanks, Selwyn.
Okay, mate.